people your direction. You're dialed in, man.
We're talking about best ball value rating, and we're talking to Chris Buenagera in the Ranking Summit. We'll talk a lot about changes in ADP and those types of things, but we were in the pre-show meeting talking about best ball value rating and the role in which it may be valuable for us. And I was explaining to Chris like the process by which I was going through this. And Chris, you said that you were concerned about its predictive nature, but you changed your mind based on how I explained the purpose and the process of it. You want to talk a little bit more about why you shifted your opinion on the need for predictive nature of the best ball value rating?
Yeah, no, I think the idea is to encapsulate what we know, not what we can assume. So I like how you put it, of using it as a framework for your process and then adding your projections, or finding a creative way to then add using other things about fantasy football and best ball to build on it. But in terms of a starting out point, especially for someone who maybe doesn't follow football the amount we do, this can just give you the easy answers essentially.
Yeah, so a couple players that are very interesting, and maybe we can just discuss, Chris, is Nico Collins. So Collins and Tank Dell. We love Tank Dell. Tank Dell crushed in terms of best ball value rating, and so did Nico Collins. Collins finished as the 19th best player in best ball value rating, 10.66. Obviously overperformed expectations. He was a player that I was not in on last year. I was concerned about Stroud, new head coach, insert the concern. Not many people thought that Houston would be good. There were some who were like, oh, they'll outperform expectations, but the expectations were very low. And so for CJ Stroud to be hooking up with Nico Collins, right now Collins is going at like the 1-2 turn a little bit at the beginning of the second round. I've seen him like as late as 15, 16. But Tank Dell is coming off of the Tony Pollard injury. So there's a few things that we need to balance here in how we're like processing Nico Collins. One is he for real? And we can debate whether or not he's for real. Two is, if he is for real, how is he going to be affected by Tank Dell coming back? And maybe Tank Dell doesn't come back very easily like Tony Pollard. That's something we can talk about as well. And third is, reportedly the Houston Texans were interested in trading for Keenan Allen, indicating that they were not done in the wide receiver room. Noah Brown was a good presence there last year. They re-signed Dalton Schultz. This Houston Texans wide receiver core is one that is obviously loved because of CJ Stroud, but how are we going to navigate Nico Collins and Tank Dell going into 2024?
Yeah, that's a fair question. The entirety of the Houston Texans, to a degree, is overpriced. Now the question is how overpriced, and like you said, where are we willing to come in? So Nico Collins, I wasn't in on him last year, not the way we should have been. But you look at the career progression from rookie to sophomore to junior, you just get up and up and up, everything we want to see. The one thing I'll say for Collins, if you look at the splits when Dell is on the field and when Dell is not on the field, no Dell, he's like a shutout wide receiver 1. With Dell, he's like this shared wide receiver 2, but that's not necessarily a negative. I have seen a lot of charts and graphs looking at things like yards per out run, EPA per play, pretty much any metric people can put on a chart to compare receivers. Nico Collins is at the top right of every single chart, man, like from last year. It's crazy the company he's in. So while it goes against my beliefs of him in the last 2 years, I think at this point, it's just, I'm going to stomach it and pay the price. But especially if the value rating you've assigned shows that he was positive. The one concern that you brought up that is true, and why I wouldn't hate on someone for being skeptical of Collins' current cost, is the bucket is full and one more drop of water does overflow this ADP, because these players have not budged on Dalton Schultz coming back, on Noah Brown coming back. Target competition has been added already, and we haven't budged. So if they do add a player that people consider very good in this draft, one of these top receivers, Collins probably falls to like early to mid third round, but he's not getting any cheaper than that at any point. And you got to just bite the bullet. I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think you're still gonna have to buy into Nico Collins and the underdog streets because of the wide receiver thirst. The reality is you're starting 3 wide receivers and you're needing Nico Collins to be one of your wide receiver 1, 2, or 3 every single week. And you're just gonna have to ride with him if he fails. And you're also putting yourself in a good position if you draft Nico Collins in the second round to be able to be flexible later on in your draft. Like you could take McCaffrey. I don't know if Nico Collins is going to make it all the way back, but some people are taking CD Lamb and Brees Hall and getting cute and putting Bijan up there. I think that when we get to midsummer, there's going to be some more casuals that get in, and you could see Nico Collins being curiously stacked in the second round, and then you can have a lot more freedom to be creative with where you're building with Nico Collins later on in the draft. But we mentioned like other pieces in this offense. Tony Pollard was not good until week 11 or 12. And Tank Dell is not a big guy. Like he's not built like Tony Pollard. He's a small little tiny 5'8", 180, if that, wide receiver. But here's the thing. He was not playing mostly in the slot. He was playing a lot on the outside and winning on the outside, which is still wild to me that not only that the team was running him out there, but that they were throwing it to him and that he was winning. So all of those pieces together are just very interesting. And I was hoping that Dalton Schultz would move on, right? Frankly, because we look at Dalton Schultz. I was able to pull up his ADP right now. He's jumped from 127th overall to 120th overall. So back end of the 10th round, we've seen a 5.4% increase in his ADP now that we have clarity. So my concern with Dalton Schultz is that he's just going to continue to gobble useless targets like over the middle. And maybe he'll be nice if Tank Dell still misses a little bit or is slow to start. But the big concern for me is the Keenan Allen rumors and rumblings that they're not done at addressing wide receiver. And while the free agent market for wide receiver is dried up, the draft has a lot of very, very good receivers that can be day 2 picks at this point.
Even not only does the draft have a lot of potential at receiver, it has a lot of guys that the fantasy football community is crazy about. So you can have a player that's absolutely terrible, go to any team and drive down other player price. So frankly, I'm just out on Dell at cost right now. And for me, it just boils down to red flags and upside. And the biggest red flag is small sample, hyper efficient monster. We've seen this regress every time. And then you have generally smaller size, already injured, possibly more injuries, possibly more target competition for a guy that I'm not going to say I overdrafted, but I dabbled with last year in the final rounds, and I'm proud of that. Is a guy that now, even if he hits his ceiling, it might not pay off third round.
Right.
So if he falls to 6th round, 7th round at any point, I'll consider it. But right now, we've both played fantasy football too long enough to identify a trap in the 3rd round.
And that's Tank Dell at 30th overall right now.
And that's unfortunate because I love him. Love the guy.
And based on the regression model that I ran comparing best ball value rating to current ADP, there is only one other player ahead of Tank Dell in terms of best ball value rating that is a worse value. And that is Jamar Chase.
No, really? Why?
Really?
You got to break this down for me. You don't
really
like him?
No, Chase, I think will bounce back. I think that that's just last year being affected by Joe Burrow's injury significantly. I do believe in the bounce back for Chase, but even last year, I was not drafting a lot of Jamar Chase because his floor is much scarier than the Justin Jeffersons, the Tyreek Hills of the world, the CD Lambs of the world. If Jamar Chase fails, he fails miserably. Whereas if Tyreek Hill fails, he'll still get you 6 for 60, right? If Jamar Chase fails, he gets you a 5 for 25, and that's disastrous, right? And so the data that we have from the last couple of years indicates to us that while Chase has access to the most elite of ceilings. His top 5 rate among wide receivers is near the top of every single list. His floor, his rate to get at least 12.5 fantasy points is actually a lot lower than most of the other first round draft picks. And so my concern is that while Chase can get you, like, sure, you want to go for a week 17 correlation, fine, be my guest. If you want to stack with you want to go with some Bengal stacks, be my guest. But you also have to realize that Chase historically his floor is hurt, especially when T. Higgins is there. And T. Higgins is back on the Bengals, and at least the franchise tag. I know he has been requesting a trade, but sometimes these things just don't get honored. And Chris, as long as T. Higgins is on the Bengals, I think Jamar Chase is a candidate to fail as a first-round wide receiver.
Listen, I'm not going to say that anything you just said is untrue. And if the viewing audience could place their money anywhere, I would go with your numbers and brain over my heart any day of the week. But my heart just says Joe Burrow, MVP run, Chase and Higgins eat. Maybe Chase isn't wide receiver 1, but he's wide receiver 4. And Boyd's gone. And Burrow was on his couch in January last year, not playing playoff football. I'm going to go with heart. But everything you said is correct. And if there was someone to peg out of that top 6, I think now you can be a little scared of Jefferson, depending on who his quarterback ends up being, because that is going to matter to a degree. But I do agree that while Chase is the upper echelon of player, there are very tiny holes you can poke in his game that does cost his floor. Very, very minuscule ones. So that's fair. That's fair. I'm still going for it, but I'm definitely not Chase no matter what, you know?
Yeah, there are some people that are just chips in on Chase, and I don't hate those people. Like, Jamar Chase is an extremely talented wide receiver. There's a reason why he is a consensus first-round pick. Let's not get crazy. But we do have to realize what kind of asset he is. Not all best ball players are the same. Not all fantasy football players are distributed in the same way. Jamar Chase can access elite ceilings, but his floor rate is a lot lower. T. Higgins, on the other hand, is the complete opposite, Chris. His floor is extremely high, but he has like a 1.5% top 5 rate over the last 2 years. He can't access the elite ceilings on a consistent basis. But he'll get targets. He'll get consistent ones down the field. He'll occasionally get you the touchdown. Like 6 for 70 and a touchdown for T. Higgins sounds great. 7 for 90, great. Fine. 7 for 90 gets you 12.5 fantasy points. There you go. That's our threshold, though, is 7 for 90. And T. Higgins is very good at getting there. But the 2 touchdown games, very rare for T. Higgins. The double-digit receptions and 150 yards, very rare for T. Higgins, because Jamar Chase is there and he is the 1A. I've identified T. Higgins. Last year, he had a 6.22 best ball value rating. Fine. Like, that's okay. That was 64th best. So like a 5th round grade, 6th round grade or so. But right now, he's going 44th overall. 44th. And once again, there is wide receiver thirst. I get it. But T. Higgins is, again, like, these Bengals are candidates. These Bengals wide receivers are candidates to be fails for you. So I have concerns that we're not going to be able to get T. Higgins, Jamar Chase to pay off their ADP. And Joe Burrow right now is getting a 73.7 best ball value rating. And you're thinking to yourself, or he has a 73.7 ADP. Last year, his best ball value rating was 2.83. And for quarterbacks, it's very simple. Are you getting to be a top 5 quarterback? The problem with Burrow is he can't run. He won't run. The Bengals aren't having him run. He's a pocket passer who has a history of ACL injury recently. He's just not going to run. They've got a goal line player with Joe Mixon from previous seasons. Now they have Zach Moss. That's why I'm still buying Zach Moss. And throughout the summer, I'll be drafting Zach Moss. Same with Chase Brown. But I think it's the running backs you want to target for Cincinnati this year. And Joe Burrow and the wide receivers are avoids.
You know what? I thought I was coming here to have a fun conversation about fantasy football, and now you have me not liking the Bengals. How are you going to make a man straight from his own heart, Bradley? Okay. Good thing I didn't place that Burrow MVP future, because I'm going to cry myself to sleep tonight. I really am, because I don't have a rebuttal. Those were all fire points. I disagreed prior to a minute ago, but I'm going to have to reevaluate. Honestly, I too love Zach Moss. I'm a huge fan. I was a huge fan going into free agency, and I think the landing spot is electric. I think
even with the 3-round jump, I still am drafting him.
Jump. Yeah. It's okay. It's not going to be the same, but I'm getting a kind of like a, I'm not even going to say it. It's a good vibe. He has a lot of volume. I'm not going to compare him to some other situation. It's just a good situation. I don't necessarily love Chase Brown. I feel like you got to you're going in on Chase Brown despite the very small sample and basically just like 3 broken screenplays.
Sure, great. Sounds great. It's a lot of
You're
fun.
in.
Sure.
That's a yes.
Yes, I'm in on the Bengals running backs. Yes.
Okay.
The Bengals have wanted to use 2 backs for a long time. The problem is Chris Evans was supposed to be that guy, and he failed. Samaje Perine left for Denver. The Bengals have wanted to use 2 backs, and they finally get an electric, like a lightning guy in Chase Brown. They needed a thunder guy, Zach Moss. Here we go. Zach Moss last year was 44th best player in terms of best ball value rating, 7.82. His ADP right now is 113.6 as of like last night.
No, you don't have to sell me. I love Zach Moss. You know what? You got me. I'm in 100%. Fade the Bengals receivers. Focus on the Bengals running backs. God bless you, man. That's a great take.
Here we go. We can move on. We got to talk about the Miami backfield, Chris, because right now, Devon Achane is being drafted at 18th overall, mid-second round. The Dolphins did not address the running back position in free agency. Maybe they do in the draft. That's a possibility. However, Raheem Mostert was the 7th best player overall in terms of best ball value rating last year, ahead of Justin Jefferson, ahead of Achane himself. And Raheem Mostert is being drafted at 94th overall. How is this possible?
I don't know, man. It's
like we have baked in the injuries. We have baked in the health. We have baked in them bringing in another running back. We have baked in him being 32 years old. We have baked in every single possibility. 94 seems too late still.
It feels wrong because we understand regression to take the guy at any price after the big year that we know isn't going to be repeated. But you're right. He goes after what I consider the bulk of every receiver you pretty much want to consider a starting receiver. Once you get around 7-8, receiver really dries up, and then you're going to find a couple of darts later. So it's not even like normally I would have thought the community would have pegged this guy for a 5th-round pick. I thought your choice was going to be like Christian Kirk or Raheem Mostert, but it's not. Your choice is, I can't even think of the receivers there right now, but it's maybe like Christian Watson or Raheem Mostert. And it's okay, I'm very interested in Raheem Mostert at that price, especially if you started 0 running back. I've been thinking about the Miami Dolphins backfield a lot because you're right. They haven't added. I think there's a chance they add in the draft, but they're probably not going to add someone significant. Maybe
they like Salvin Ahmed. Jeff Wilson is still there.
So I don't see why Mostert and Achane aren't going to run it back. And Achane is running off an incredibly small sample. Incredibly small. Yeah, I mean, I feel you can't not draft Achane on the off chance he extrapolates that sample and is David Johnson for a year. But Raheem Mostert is definitely probably the best value for sure on that team right now.
Okay, let's play a game.
Yeah.
Raheem Mostert or Raheem Mostert or Jaylen Warren?
I knew you were going to say Jaylen Warren. I knew it because that was in my heart, man. You got to like the player Jaylen Warren more. But at that point, oh man, it's such a toss up. I would just go back and forth, do 150 drafts, take them each back and forth at that spot. Gun to my head, I guess Raheem Mostert. Oh, that's such a tough one. I don't know. Where do you sit on that?
I don't think it's particularly close. I think it's Raheem Mostert
I think
by
so,
far.
just by far. You don't like Warren this year?
Jaylen Warren, let me find him. Warren had last year 0.37% rate of top 5 weeks. 0.37%. That was running back 39. So he's not giving you an elite ceiling. There's no access. Najee Harris is there. But your flex rate, like the rate at which he got at least 12 fantasy points, 28%. 28% last year. That's running back 36. He's still pegged, no matter where you're talking elite upside or floor, he's a back end running back 3. Now, what's really nice is that he would consistently get 8 to 10. He would always get 8 to 10 fantasy points in half PPR. So we didn't feel like, oh, he's letting us down because he was just below that threshold, but so consistently below that threshold. He has no access to elite ceilings. Raheem Mostert, we've seen time and again get elite ceiling games, whether it was when he was with the 49ers against the Packers in the playoffs, whether it was this year. Raheem Mostert last 25.6% of his games, he was a top 5 running back. That's 75 times more than Jaylen Warren. And 63% of the time, he was at least a flex play. He was not letting you down. So give me this guy in a role that gave no indication of change or turnover. Like even when Achane came back from his injuries, his multiple injuries, which he's still not built to carry the load. So that's not within the range of outcomes. Give me lots of Raheem Mostert and then like last 20th round Jeff Wilson or 20th round Salvin Ahmed.
Again, I'm not going to go for Wilson or Ahmed, but I will agree with you on Mostert. You're 2 for 2.
I'm not trying to win.
No, this isn't even. You know what it is? You've just pegged up some of the situations that I personally have been a little flippy floppy on and haven't come to a real decision yet. And it's part of the reason why I want to come on and talk with you because you have these viewpoints and you're hitting them with such conviction. And I haven't been standing in the camp on the other side firmly enough to come at you on it. Now, if you hit me on one, I'll let you know. But
okay, how about this one? Let's play another one. Raheem Mostert or Javonte Williams.
You have to go Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, it's Raheem Mostert.
That one's not really close. I do want to mention I do the idea of Javonte Williams because just the sheer amount of targets Denver had to the running back last year, and we have that situation of the James Robinson, Gardner Minshew, check down Charlie role potential for a guy that's now removed from his ACL. But I'm not going to take that dart on the Denver offense when you just have Raheem Mostert. There's no reason Raheem Mostert. Listen, he's not going to be as good as he was last year, but he's not just going to die. Like he's not retiring.
He's not retiring. Raheem Mostert won't die.
Yeah, his legs
he'll
aren't
be playing at
just
40-year-old Raheem Mostert, still a top 12 back.
Yeah, like week 7, he's not gonna hit his 800th yard for the season, and his legs just evaporate midfield. Like he'll be okay.
I think the only thing that Raheem Mostert that would doom him is his fumbling. He just tends to fumble when he gets a lot of volume, and that's something that you can lose your job over. So I think that's the risk that I'm actually most worried about is he got benched, I think, for part of a game in 2023 because of the fumbling. So that's one. Last one, and maybe this is a little more controversial. Are you ready, Chris?
Very.
Okay. Raheem Mostert or Tazi Spears, Tennessee.
You still have to go Mostert, but I love Tajay Spears, man. I really do. I'll tell you what. I don't know how you look at exposure, but I look at it as essentially 8% exposure on a player in a 150 entry contest is like an average amount, and then it goes up and down from there. So like I would have Mostert as an 8% player, despite all the positive you said. There's still a lot of red flags for me, and there's just the biggest red flag of Miami as a whole. And Miami as a whole, they didn't properly manage their salary cap situation. They're not the Saints. There's a lot of room for the whole team to regress, especially as other teams scout them more. And then as much as we did see last year with McDaniels, we know for sure he's going to put a ton of volume to running backs overall. He's done it for years now. But he did want to bring in Taylor last year, this and that. There's still a chance. It's not a great chance, but still a chance. He says, hey, let me throw a Jonathan Brooks on here and shake the whole thing up. So I'm not.
Oh, you mean Jonathan Brooks, who gets a top 30 visit to the Dallas Cowboys?
He's definitely going to the Cowboys, but I was just trying to give a name that people would care about. If I said Trey Benson or Blake Corum, people might laugh at me, but I love him.
Jalen Wright.
I love Jalen Wright. But I'm going to have what I call like healthy skepticism, but you're totally right. No one should be, you shouldn't not be clicking his name at that price tag, but I'm not going to do it every single draft.
No, not every single draft. You don't want 100% exposure, but 46% exposure sounds great. No.
I would go maybe 10, 12% tops. 12% for me is a lot.
Awesome. Let's keep looking at a few other players. So something interesting that I noticed is that there's a lot of love for the Green Bay Packers. Jaden Reed drafted 54th overall right now, 54.3 in Underdog Fantasy. 53. And then we keep scrolling down and we have Christian Watson at 82, Jordan Love at 84. So at that end of the 7th round, 7-8 turn. And then we also have Romeo Doubs at 94 and Dontavion Wicks also later on in the draft. The problem is the model for best ball value rating indicates that all of these players are overpriced. Every single Packers player is not a good value. And like that hurts my soul because I'm a Packers fan and I want to be able to draft all of my Packers and win with all of my Packers. But my concern with Jordan Love is that he throws a lot of touchdowns. He doesn't run for a lot. And so he gets all these big plays. He doesn't get the half PPR bonus, that type of thing. He gets the big stretch plays from Watson. He gets the big bomb plays to Jaden Reed, the yards after the catch. And then you've got Wicks and you've got Doubs. And all of these, we don't know who it's going to be week to week, which hurts each of those players. And while we love the passing touchdowns, I think Jordan Love had 30, 32 passing touchdowns last year. Almost no rushing. And that's what's going to hurt him being able to access the elite ceilings that we want relative to the ADP. I don't mind where Jordan Love is going compared to the other quarterbacks, because right now Jordan Love is behind Dak Prescott, behind Joe Burrow, but he's ahead of Brock Purdy, which I really don't mind, and ahead of Justin Herbert as well, ahead of Tua. I think that's a good spot for him, but I think he needs to move down. He's in that James Conner, Raheem Mostert. Like, you don't want to click some of those other flex plays, so you're trying to click a quarterback. But Jordan Love is too high relative to what he had a great year last year, especially in the second half. But he's being drafted 84th overall.
Yeah, so it's something I try to pay a lot of attention to. There's a lot of players, especially at wide receiver. Their ranking among their position is fine, but their ranking across all positions is not.
Yes.
So like you said, like I have upside at high end RB2, low end RB1s potentially in the same range as Jordan Love, and I can replace his fantasy points with Jared Goff 3 rounds later. That's really the conundrum. So you got to mix them in, right? Because you never know. Week 17, we're playing DFS for 3 weeks, so everyone gets mixed in when they're good, and Jordan Love is good. But yeah, in my mind, and this is a compliment. People are going to take this the wrong way, but this is 100% a compliment. He's way more Dak Prescott and Jared Goff than he is Joe Burrow. But I think
Yes.
those guys are great quarterbacks because they are great quarterbacks. And to call someone Dak Prescott or Jared Goff is a massive compliment. But he's not the end all do all. There's definitely a lot of overrated on this team. I think the players we're going to value on this team next year are going to be drastically different than the ones we did last year as a whole.
Yes.
Did you see Ryan Heath's piece on first downs per route run compared to yards per route run and regression with that?
He found that first down yards per route run was much stronger correlated, correct?
Yeah, and it was good at helping you. Basically, what it was good for, it was good as basically an extension of yards per route run to show you when yards per route run is overvaluing guys who just had a couple of big plays rather than doing it consistently. And Jaden Reed was one of my guys last year. I love Jaden Reed. I loved him coming out, but he certainly was a victim of this. I don't think you can look at Jaden Reed and say, hey, in the 5th round, that's for sure the guy. I don't think Jaden Reed, I think we saw Jaden Reed's ceiling. Now, I don't think his floor is a lot lower, but it might not go up. Not everything goes linear, right? Reed is tough. There's no way I'm drafting Romeo Doubs in the top 100. He's just a guy, a good guy, but just a guy, unless you disagree. I'm
2022, he was the worst wide receiver in terms of PFF receiving grade.
Yeah, you can't touch him. Because they're very cheap, like taking stabs on Musgrave and Wicks. I think Wicks had really nice yards per out run and EPA last year. Nice enough where you're getting him for a decent price, even though his ceiling's probably 140 fantasy points. Luke Musgrave is the one where I don't think metrics or any type of algorithm is going to do him justice. He was a great prospect. Tight ends usually take a while to break out. He's entering year 2 now. I don't care about Tucker Kraft. This guy potentially could be a nice tight end, but a good quarterback.
Yeah, so looking at that Jaden Reed, you mentioned he's getting drafted about 54th overall in the same tier as George Pickens, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, essentially being clicked around that spot. I think the reason why they are being like all of those wide receivers, it's Zay Flowers, it's George Pickens, it's Jaden Reed, it's Christian Kirk, it's Terry McLaurin. All of those are ranked as bad values in the 5th round per my best ball value rating comparison tool. And so as a result, I think that is what should put us on in round 5, Isaiah Pacheco. It should put, and that kind of steeps into a little bit earlier of your 0 RB build. Like it's not a pure 0 RB. You want to go no RB in the first 5 rounds, but I could see in the first 4 rounds, and then you're clicking Pacheco or you're clicking Kenneth Walker comes in at a good value. Those are 2 running backs that I think in round 5, you load up your team in the first 4 rounds, and then you've got some staple at running back 1, or if you decide you want to go with one of those elite options, Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, etc., and you want to avoid some of those, I feel like these are like the dead zone wide receivers in a sense, that they're not accessing elite ceilings. Or I like George Pickens, but there's always a reason, like a fatal flaw of these types of wide receivers at this spot.
A lot of times it's just target share, but you're again spot on. I think most people, there's no one left is fighting a 0 RB start. It's just mainstay best ball at this point. Most drafts, most people, myself at least, I'm going to start the first 4 rounds with almost always all receivers. Now, sometimes you'll pepper in a running back. Sometimes you'll just get cornered into 2. Sometimes you'll pepper in Josh Allen. But I agree round 5 is a great place to start to deviate. I love the theoretical upside of Kenneth Walker, even if it might seem scary. And see, now you mentioned running backs. I like the tight end pivot. You have Trey McBride and Mark Andrews right there. Mark Andrews by ADP goes 1 pick after Reed. And both these guys are candidates to be tight end 1 overall, especially Mark Andrews. Especially Mark. The fact that you can get Mark Andrews in the 5th round, like Jaden Reed or Mark Andrews, that's a nonsensical choice. Give me Mark Andrews. I can't say I love Pacheco in the 5th round because I guess internally I believe that the Chiefs bring in some competition for him.
He survived the running back rodeo.
He survived the rodeo, but the Chiefs are a smart team, and smart teams don't really invest in free agents, and they always draft to get ahead. And they're probably looking at, hey, this time next year, we probably have a running back problem. And I wouldn't be, and if they bring in anyone significant, especially a pass catcher like a Trey Benson or a Bucky Irving, it doesn't kill Pacheco. He gets a lot of touchdowns, but that's one where I'm still on the fence. You could probably convince me onto him. I don't want to shoo that one, but I think everything you're saying is spot on, and I agree fully.
So Pacheco last year, running back 15 in terms of rate of top 5 weeks, but Isaiah Pacheco was RB9 in terms of rate of flex weeks, 12.5 fantasy points or more. He was getting volume. He was getting enough spike weeks. He was getting enough touchdowns. And that was with a sprinkling of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and a sprinkling of Jerick McKinnon. So I agree with you. He's been a big winner from free agency, but he also runs hard. And our concern is how long is that going to last? And Pacheco has been lucky in terms of navigating and managing injuries. He's been injured at the right time. But when it comes to who's going to let you down at that spot, we know Pacheco can get us 10 and a half in the best ball value rating, which would make him very much pay off around 5 very easily. Even if he gets down to 7 or 8, that's going to be a great value too. So when it comes to who am I picking, I know that the tight ends are really sexy there, and we like the Mark Andrews, who could be the tight end 1, or maybe Laporte is going a little earlier, but maybe it's Kelsey or it's Andrews, McBride, or one of the tight ends that I hate is Dalton Kincaid. Sorry, Chris. But
sorry, Chris. I didn't say anything about Dalton Kincaid.
I know. I'm just apologizing in advance.
I don't love his price.
All these tight ends are getting drafted so early.
You think it's early? I think they're cheaper than ever.
Here's the thing. So Kelsey finishes the tight end 1 barely last year in terms of best ball value rating. In fact, going into the playoffs, because best ball value rating does take into account playoff games because it's high-level competition. They're playing actual games against NFL teams, high-level teams, does give us a little bit more data. Kelsey was able to still access ceilings that we liked in the playoff games, but it was Laporta at the end of the regular season. To give context, Kelsey only had like 6.2 best ball value rating. 6.2. George Pickens last year is 6.5. The amount that they're contributing is just like positional value is just not there. Give me Evan Engram.
I'm not like gonna listen. Give me Evan Engram. Give me Evan Engram. If I show you my exposure right now, it's Evan Engram and then the rest of these guys. I'm not saying okay, we're going crazy for tight end. It's back to the 8% because positional value at the end of the day is going to dominate all. But in weaving through the draft, I understand what you're saying. It's obvious the Chiefs are saving Kelsey for playoffs, right? At least his biggest efforts. Sam Laporta finished as the tight end 1. Granted, it was a low scoring overall tight end 1. When have you ever seen the tight end 1 go late 3rd round, early 4th round the following year? They're usually a 1st to late 2nd round pick. That's incredibly cheap for a tight end 1. Now it makes sense. I'm still not drafting a ton of Laporta, but you now have like
it's just value over replacement though. Even though you're getting the 1. Like, how much are we dropping from the tight end 1 to the tight end 8? And I think the difference,
a pretty good amount, in my opinion,
really?
from 1 to 8, at least for tight end. If I can get a tight end that scores me 240 fantasy points, that will move the needle. And I know Mark Andrews can do it. He's done it, right? And he's still young. So it's a matter of you're in the 5th round. I like Isaiah Pacheco, but so you're looking at it again in a much smarter way than I am. I look at it as just what do I think this person's range of total scoring outcomes is. And a running back, in my opinion, in the 5th round really needs to clear 220 total fantasy points. And that's like the high end of Pacheco. I can find 220 running back fantasy points in round 10. I'm not finding 240 tight end fantasy points, most likely in round 10. I can find 170.
Well, you don't need that. You don't need
it. You can Frankenstein tight end. And if I'm taking a Mark Andrews, I'm not taking any more tight ends, essentially.
No, you're taking last round, I don't know, Michael Mayer. You're taking a guy who could hit Hunter Henry, that type.
No, you're totally right.
A Ben Sinnott. I like it. Good call.
I think Pacheco as RB14 is fair among running backs. I'd be very surprised if he didn't finish at least in that range of 12 to 16. And you're right, if he runs really hot with touchdowns again, I just think this is a profile leads itself to a lot of regression. But the way you're modeling things makes a lot of sense. So again, I'm not avoiding Pacheco. I'll have him at that 8%. I'll have Andrews at that 8%. But the moral of the story is you can feel totally okay fading these receivers in that range. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, I'm okay with taking maybe one, but
Yeah.
the other thing that I want to share with you, Chris, and this is some data that I just dove into last night. So this is fresh, and maybe you can offer a new perspective on it too.
Okay.
I compared best ball value rating to ADP, but I filtered only for players currently drafted in rounds 5 through 8. And you know how we were talking about how at quarterback, the relationship is 60%, and at running back, it was 75, and wide receiver was 75, and tight end, it was like 72 or whatever it was. The relationship between best ball value rating and ADP from rounds 5 through 8, regardless of position, 0. It is a flat line. It is an absolute flat line. I've never seen this before in my life, which means that there is zero correlation between the best ball value rating correlating to current ADP. But who are all of the players who scored at least a 10 in the best ball value rating? There were 6 of them. There were 6 players now being drafted in rounds 5 to 8. Last year, 10. This is going to blow your mind. This is going to blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Ready?
Oh, I'm
this is
ready.
so exciting. This is so exciting. I'm going to sort by ADP just to make sure.
I'm grabbing my socks to make sure you don't
Oh
knock
my
them
gosh.
off.
Okay. Isaiah Pacheco, running back. Joe Mixon, running back. Alvin Kamara, running back. David Montgomery, running back. James Conner, running back. Raheem Mostert, running back. There are no other positions that accessed 10 in the best ball value rating. There's none. It's all 6 of them are running backs. No other position that's being drafted at that spot is giving you the possible upside, league-winning upside. Because if you're drafting at that spot in rounds 5 through 8, you need to hit. And the players who failed for you last year in this spot, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Dalton Kincaid, and Kyle Pitts. So you have 2 tight ends and a rookie wide receiver were the only ones who finished so significantly below. But it's a coin flip. What it's essentially saying is at a 0 R squared, it is a complete coin flip of players. But what we notice in our trend is that all running backs, all of the ones who killed and crushed and hit were running backs. What do you think about that?
I think if you read my pre-draft best ball 25-page deep dive from 3 weeks ago, you would see that I said, hey, rounds 5 to 8 is where we start getting running backs. And rounds 1 to 4 is receiver. I actually wrote a whole preamble in the intro saying, if you see a receiver you love who goes rounds 5 through 8, and I'm taking him 2% of the time, it's because I can't take him over a running back at that range. And right. I'm just crushing running backs in that range. And you totally nailed it. I don't want you to think I'm some kind of like tight end is the answer zealot, but I think you have to. I think part of the dance, part of the beautiful. See, a best ball draft is not a guitar solo, right? You're not riffing through value. It is a whole orchestra, a beautiful symphony of weaving things. So I just think,
yes.
I think part of your builds have to try to incorporate this chunk of top 10 tight ends we all feel comfortable with, but of course. Your better builds are going to be your Evan Engram, Luke Musgrave, and Ben Sinnott tight end groups. And then you crushed rounds 5 through 8 running back, rounds 1 through 4 receiver. Maybe you managed to get Josh Allen in there. But it's good to know we're thinking the same way. And I think, again, your dad is totally spot on. Now, the question is which running backs? Because, again, I'm not just going to copy and paste the same 5 guys from last year. And we can discuss for the next 3 months nonstop which running backs. We'll never run out of breath.
Okay, so I'll just list the ones that I didn't talk about already, and then we can say, Chris, maybe you can just give a thumbs up or thumbs down. Be like the Roman emperor in the Colosseum. Yeah.
Gladiator.
Oh, that's such a great movie. Such a great movie. I'll have to watch it here coming up soon. All right. Rounds 5 through 8, running backs that we didn't mention yet. Kenneth Walker. Yep. I agree with you. Aaron Jones. Ooh,
sorry,
okay.
Bud.
Okay. Ramondre Stevenson.
Can I just go middle? I'll wiggle it. I'm gonna lean down.
Tony Pollard.
This one's a soft spot. Can we skip Tony Pollard?
No, you gotta pick one.
I'm gonna say yes on Pollard.
Okay,
I'll circle back on Pollard. That's our guy. No one loves him more than 2 of us.
There we go. Nick Chubb. Yeah, no. Najee Harris. Yeah, I think I'd take Najee at 83 overall.
You have to.
At the end of round 7 with an Arthur Smith offense, yeah.
He's going to absorb 280 total touches and all the red zone work.
Austin Eckler.
Sorry, my camera's in a weird spot. We went down.
Yeah, Washington gave him like no financial backing at all.
Yeah, listen, everyone in the fantasy industry loves Austin Eckler, the dude, but he's too expensive.
DeAndre Swift.
I'm going down.
Ooh, interesting.
I'm out.
Are you a Khalil Herbert guy?
I am a Khalil Herbert guy. Huge Khalil Herbert guy. I hope they trade him, honestly, or cut him at this point.
Same.
Free him.
Jalen Warren.
I was up, but you've now convinced me down. You did that, and I thank you for it, even though...
Javonte Williams.
Yeah, you got to take stabs.
Okay.
He's going to have a ton of targets.
Pretty much, Chris, outside of those guys that hit the 10 or above, you were about 50-50. And that's what this data is indicating, that aside from those big ones, you were going to be very split. And it's the tight ends and the wide receivers that are more hit and miss at this spot and more avoids, frankly. Like, I love Ramondre at this spot. I love Tony Pollard at this spot. I love DeAndre Swift at this spot. I love Najee Harris. And I love a lot more of the running backs at this spot. This is like the running back heaven. We're just click, whoever. Aaron Jones, I don't mind. I know you were thumbs down, but I would give thumbs up to that.
I'm Minnesota now. You're not worried about him missing time.
Minnesota. No. I'm not too worried. So Aaron Jones last year in week 1 against Chicago played only 47% of snaps and was the RB1 despite leaving the game in the third quarter.
Listen, I'm not doubting the talent at all. The dude's amazing. He's 29 and a half, but he only has 1,300 career touches. So he's at the age apex. He's not at the touch apex. But I don't know, man. It's a lot of injury risk. Maybe I'm just superstitious. I'm like Leonardo DiCaprio with my running backs. There's an age cutoff. I like them young.
Jesus, Pete.
Was that too ricey for a fantasy football podcast?
We are on the ranking summit, and we are climbing high. Make sure you guys are like and subscribe. Chris has been a great guest so far. We got just a couple minutes left. Chris, you're at Value Draft Picks on the X machine. What other things do you want to be hyping up before we get into our last little segment here?
No, just follow me on Twitter. I'm posting independently on just my buddy's blog now. If I do make content, it's going to be a lot of deep dives, a lot of explanation of thought process. So where, Brad, you're offering a lot of analytics and you're putting a lot of numbers to it, I'm putting a lot of just feel to it, but feel that comes from mainstay truths that we know about the way things go. I'm trying to just describe the intangibles more. So you can basically find anything I'm doing on Twitter.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. At Value Draft Picks. Great. Let me see. we've got a couple movers in terms of free agency. One of those was traded during free agency. That would be Deontay Johnson, currently wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers. Best ball value rating last season of 4.59. He's finished as the wide receiver 36 each of the last 2 seasons in terms of fantasy points per game. His ADP is 81st overall, but my best ball value rating system has him as a bad value. And while I like Deontay Johnson as a target earner, we have to have our concerns about Carolina and the passing game, and he may be the only player to get open, but I don't think he's enough to be in the scenario where he's not the rising tide that's going to lift all boats for the Carolina Panthers, right? He's not going to be the panacea of the disease that has plagued the Panthers. There's going to need to be more moves for Deontay Johnson to be valuable. And for right now, I think he's overpriced, and the market is very hungry for wide receivers like him. I'm not sure I can click him very easily at that spot at 81 overall.
Yeah, so early big board before free agency, his ADP was like 118 overall, which is about like round 11, 10 to 11. And at that value, I was just drafting Deontay Johnson in every draft. It didn't matter what happens. Now you're 100% right. He's too expensive. He is quite literally Jarvis Landry. Like, it is just Jarvis Landry new. And Jarvis Landry was always a hit miss wide receiver 3 in fantasy football. And it's just for Jarvis Landry at 84th overall, pass. Jarvis Landry at 120 overall, great. So it's really just a matter of price. And yeah, current price is too high.
All right. And then a couple other players that had switched teams. Marquise Hollywood Brown signs with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's jumped from like in the hundreds. I think he was like 108 to now 71, 72 overall. 2.75 best ball value rating last year. Once again, a target guy on Baltimore, but that was when it was Mark Andrews and Hollywood, and that was it. And he wasn't clicking with Kyler even when Kyler came back from the ACL injury. I think that Hollywood Brown gets stuck in the Marquez Valdez-Scantling role, which Hollywood's better than MVS, but I think we're going to have scarier floors than what we've seen in the past from Hollywood.
You've seen the movie Groundhog Day?
Have I seen the movie? Chris, I don't know if you know this about me. Every year I take off work for Groundhog Day. I celebrate privately.
I'm very happy that you're a big fan.
I watch the movie every year. I Got You Babe on repeat by Sonny and Cher. Did you know that there is a Groundhog Day remake as a musical? There is a legit musical called Groundhog Day. It's hilarious. Afterwards, I'll have to share it with you, but it's great. Anyway, sorry. You touched a subject that you didn't realize you dug into the groundhog's hole and you've awoken him.
I'll tell you what, if Marquise Brown is the first veteran free agent scraped off the street to go to the Chiefs and have his ADP jump 5 rounds and actually pay it off, if he's the first one, I'll go see Groundhog Day live in theaters. But otherwise, we're just living in Groundhog Day, man. And I don't care how many times they do it. Patrick Mahomes doesn't make you a better football player.
No, he doesn't. And based on the best ball value rating from last year, Hollywood Brown, 2.75. Yikes. Perhaps the only reason why I might click him is Jackson Smith and Jigba's right next to him, right? Unfortunately, JSN is still stuck in that spot. And now there's a possible quarterback competition between Geno Smith and Sam Howell. I don't know how I feel about that.
I'll tell you what, I really want to like JSN. Again, you look at the collegiate profile and you look at like yards per out run and all the things that say this is a great receiver. It's all there, but he played like way too much in the slot last year. I'm worried they just keep using him as a glorified slot receiver. It's going to come down to format. In like big board, I don't love it. I love the player. I don't love the price, but I do believe he could break out. But I've been doing rookies and sophomore drafts, and he's like the 11th receiver off the board in those. And it's okay, give me him in that format where he's very cheap. But in this format, there's a lot of risk. JSN is one I want to think about more, but I'm not worried about Tyler Lockett. But I again, Hollywood Brown was going a pick before Deontay Johnson before free agency. I was taking both of them all the time. Now I'm going to take running backs over those guys.
Yeah, I agree with you there. One last player, and then we'll call it for the day, Chris. One of my favorite players to click. It actually comes out really nicely in the model as a slight value. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley to the Tennessee Titans. His value has just, his ADP has just plummeted. And I get it that people are so butthurt from last year, and they're itching. They've got rashes, and they need the cream of not drafting Calvin Ridley this year. Oh, blah, blah, blah. No, the Titans told us what they think about him. A 23% target share guy who wins down the field, and who better to throw deep balls than Will Levis, right? He's not super accurate, but he's willing to throw them down the field. And Ridley missed out on tons of touchdowns last year. It could have been even bigger season. Ridley last year, though, 7.3 best ball value rating, 61st overall. He comes out actually as a value right now in the model. Give me your take on Calvin Ridley.
So I'm going to spice this up with some actual stats, and I haven't provided any of those. So little change of pace for the last.
Let's go,
one.
Chris.
Yeah, let's go. Jared Smola of Draft Sharks put out.
Love Jared. Really Shout out to Jared.
Yeah, huge winner in the industry. Put out a great 132 things I learned from last season article a few weeks ago. It has the same energy as Matthew Berry's 100 facts articles from every year. And it's the way I love content to be given. Here's just raw facts, and let me interpret it. What he has for the Tennessee Titans. So Will Levis led the league in air yards per attempt.
Yes, he
did.
Now,
granted, it wasn't necessarily all the attempts, but dude is heaving the ball, right?
Yes, he does.
Their new head coach, Brian Callahan, 4 of his last 5 Bengals offenses were top 12 in pass rate, including 3 top 6 finishes. The Titans were never higher than 24th in pass rate the last 6 seasons. They
were 30th last year.
Yeah, and for the record, I'm straight up reading this from Jared's article. So anyone watching, look up Jared Smola, Draft Sharks. It's on my Twitter, retweeted. You can look him up. And there's a lot to work with here. Treylon Burks' efficiency plummeted. DeAndre Hopkins had a 27% target share last year, but I think there's room for another guy to get in there at 22, 23. So I think Calvin Ridley was hindered by Doug Peterson's weird game plan last year.
Yeah.
I think the guy proved some level of ability. And I think this is a player that embodies what your grading system is trying to accomplish. Here's a guy that can give me those meaningful weeks that actually drive my team to 150 fantasy points a week. I'm not going to go crazy for Calvin Ridley. Again, I'm not like drafting him 25%
no,
of the
he's not
time,
like he's not a super value.
Not a super value, but he's very draftable. Very draftable. You should look at him if you put him on your team and be happy with it.
Yeah, he's being drafted as the 58th overall player, but last year was Calvin Ridley was the 48th highest in terms of best ball value rating. And that was with, as you said, the weird game plans with Doug Peterson, but also there was a strong correlation for most of the season with, is Zay Jones on the field? Yeah, I was famous for that.
Yeah, you were, dude.
I was the freaking drumbeat.
You were. That is now a mainstream narrative. Again,
I get no freaking credit for it.
You're the first person I called this season to podcast with outside of my own head for a reason, Bradley. I will bet anything that you are an industry leader in thought. I love these conversations. So I thank you for that tweet. It brought me a lot of joy. Very good
stuff. It was great. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun looking at those correlations. Just like Calvin Ridley scores like 20 fantasy points with Zay Jones on the field, and 7.5 when he doesn't have. But it actually made sense because there was no other wide receiver out there. And so it's Christian Kirk or Evan Ingram in the slot. And then you've got who else run Tim Jones?
Yeah, it's
Parker
true.
Washington, like who's running on the outside? They're just the safety's just gonna collapse on Ridley.
Yeah, I think their biggest problem, Jacksonville, was they were not ready to adjust their game plan at all if they lost guys. So I think Tennessee comes in way more flexible, and I think we'll be surprised what this
Because
offense can
Hopkins
churn
plays
out.
all over the formation,
All over.
and Ridley can play both on either side, on the outside, and you've got Chigakonkwo who can move around. Treylon Burks actually can be in the slot a little
I
bit.
think in the slot he'll be better for real life football. And
Yes.
Tennessee has the chance to do this magical thing where they have two running backs with the exact same skill set.
Yeah,
And they just have one running back game plan, and they just go 50% snaps for each one. And no matter who's on the field, it's the same running back plays. No one's ever done it, even though they've been in this situation before. So I pray that they don't make this a thunder and lightning. They do lightning and lightning. And then Ridley and
Double
Hopkins
lightning.
can also
Literally
be lightning.
Zeus.
Yeah, the whole team is just the Tennessee Zeus Titans. It's like old Greek mythology where Zeus defeated the Titans. So now the Titans are just incorporating lightning.
Yes.
Yeah. If you can't beat your enemy, join them, so to speak.
Yes.
So this fantasy show went all the way to Greek mythology. We're cooking with fire.
We most certainly are. We got it. We absolutely, the fire of the gods. Chris, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Follow Chris on the X Machine at Value Draft Picks. I'm Bradley Salter, aka at Djibouti Puns. Make sure you guys are following me on Twitter, an unserious Twitter handle for serious analysis. Until next time, everybody, good luck in the best ball streets.
I embrace all this risk, I'm insane. Talking about that best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still. Best bill, I'm the best till into the next world. Guess I got next still.